Good afternoon, all. My name is Stephanie Sabino. I am the Northeast Director of Career and Professional Development with NABALSA. And today's panel is meant to expose all of you to a career in big law. We have 5 fantastic panelists today, and I will briefly introduce each of them before I move on to questions. The first person that we have here today is Deanna Christian. She is currently an associate at Day Pitney, where she assists clients with corporate matters, focusing on mergers and acquisitions, private equity transactions, private placements of debt and equity securities, and corporate governance. Deanna is also dedicated to D&I issues and pro bono service. She currently serves as a member of Day Pitney's Racial Justice and Equity Task Force. And before joining Day Pitney, she served as the first special education law clerk to the New Jersey Office of Administrative Law. She also received a postgraduate fellowship with the Rutgers Law School Newark's Education and Health Law Clinic, the focus of which was representation, community education, and policy advocacy for families of children with disabilities who attended charter schools in the Newark area. Deanna graduated first in her class from Rutgers Law Newark, receiving the honor of Order of the Coif, and interned for the Honorable Stuart Rabner, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of New Jersey. So welcome, Deanna. The next person that we have here today is Jennifer Kent. Jennifer is a senior associate at the Washington, D.C. office of Latham & Watkins. She's a member of the firm's private equity finance practice group, where she represents private equity sponsors and company borrowers in secured lending and other financing transactions. Jennifer has an extensive experience with complex cross-border financings. She's advised clients on over $10 billion worth of international transactions. She also maintains an active pro bono practice, including advising low-income and minority business owners and entrepreneurs and assisting people on U.S. voter rights issues. Beyond the finance practice, Jennifer is also passionate about advancing diversity and inclusion in the legal profession, specifically with respect to Black lawyers. She served as the global chair of Latham's Black Lawyers Group from 2019 to 2021, and is a former member of the firm's recruiting committee. She's also a founding member of and advisor to the Black Big Law Pipeline, which some of you might have seen on LinkedIn. I know I've seen it several times on my feed, which is a nonprofit organization established to promote positive outcomes for Black attorneys in large law firms. Jennifer earned her undergrad degree cum laude from in financial economics from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and her JD from Boston College Law School, magna cum laude, where she was a member of the executive board of the Boston College Law Review, and she was also elected to the Order of the Coif. Next, we have Shanique Campbell, who hails from Westmoreland in Jamaica. She's a mid-level associate at Cravath. She holds a JD from Emory Law and a BA degree in political science and English from Howard University. Shanique has engaged in internal government and cross-border investigations and a gamut of antitrust and securities litigation. She's also on a mission to balance her career interests in white-collar defense and investigations with her passion for juvenile justice. She regularly credits her ability to keep swimming on her pro bono work with juvenile lifers. She's also an ardent mentor. She served as an academic and professional success chair of Emory's BALSA. She also was an articles editor of Emory's Law Journal, which published her legal research concerning brain waste among refugee professionals. Next, we have Christopher Giles, who is a fourth-year mergers and acquisitions associate at Cooley in Washington, D.C. Christopher represents public and private companies, including private equity funds and strategic investors across a range of industries in connection with mergers and acquisitions, cross-border acquisitions, corporate governance, and other general corporate matters. Prior to joining Cooley in 2021, he was an associate at Paul Weiss in New York City, and he is a graduate of Howard University School of Law, class of 2018. And finally, we have Ryan Estes, who is an associate and also co-vice chair of the African American and Black Resource Group at DLA Piper. He balances his practice between federal and state employment law issues, including litigation and advice and counsel work. He has broad experience defending employers and management in wage and hour class action claims, wrongful termination and harassment, discrimination and retaliation employment claims, as well as unfair business practice claims and other employment-related litigation. Ryan represents employers and management in state and federal courts and before administrative bodies throughout the United States. These include the California State Labor Commissioner, California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. He regularly counsels employers on employee discipline, employee hiring, wage and hour issues, protection of intellectual property, employee privacy matters, state and federal leave laws, internal investigations, and the creation and implementation of new and revised personnel policies. His work also includes drafting executive compensation agreements and separation agreements, especially in conjunction with startups, as well as mergers and acquisitions. Welcome, everyone. We're so thankful for having all of you here. I am going to jump straight into the first question that we have for you, which is probably a question that you get very often, but why did you choose Big Law? Anyone can start.
Yeah, I'll jump into it. Sure. Big Law for me. So a little bit of background on me. I actually started at a small plaintiff side firm with 5 attorneys in it. That was just a solo shop with a few associates. For me, the idea of getting to Big Law was that I could be with the biggest and the baddest litigators in town, and really to kind of reach that peak, right? And as you get, once you get here, as you guys will all find out one day, and as the rest of the panelists know, it may not be everything you want to do in your career, but my aspiration at the time of wanting to join a firm like DLA was to know that I could compete with the best attorneys on the planet.
I'm happy to jump in. Mine is sort of similar. I wasn't necessarily sure what type of law I wanted to do when I was a law student, and lots of firms out there provide, summer associate programs that allow you to try a bunch of different areas of law. And a lot of those firms will allow you to still have a year or two, even after you start practicing, to continue to float around and test out different practice areas. So that was really important to me because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to figure it out just by sitting in a classroom. I needed to try it out. So I wanted to go to an environment that would allow me to do that. Also, the financial benefit, honestly, like I had some loans that needed to get paid off. So that money had to come from somewhere. So I came in kind of wanting to say, okay, let me figure out what I want to do, use this as an opportunity to test out different platforms, pay off my loans, get the best training possible in the shortest amount of time. And then when I'm at that point, I can stay in Big Law, I can, go somewhere else. It opens a lot of doors. So for me, it was really just a place I thought it was a good place to start my career, make sure I was set financially, but also make sure that I was making an informed decision about what type of area of law I ultimately wanted to stay in.
I guess I will go next. So I actually had a special education background prior to joining the firm, which I actually, enjoyed to do. But for me, crossing over into corporate space and into Big Law was really mostly about the money. Because at the time, I had 2 kids, I needed to be able to support ourselves here. But the other reason, I guess, was also because, prior to the firm, I was in public interest and I wanted to help, my community. And I felt like, I was put up against a barrier there. Like I can only help but so much doing public interest. And I thought to myself that if I went into Big Law, I could be in a position of influence to be able to kind of, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So kind of help my community in a different way by giving back from my position of influence.
Christopher, we see you moving your lips, but we can't really hear you. Sorry.
you want to go, Christopher?
Alrighty, can everybody hear me now? Alrighty, perfect. Okay, so sorry for the microphone issues. Kind of similar to what Jen was pointing to. I also was someone who had no clue what I wanted to practice in law school. I went directly from undergrad to law school. So for me, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I think law firms provide you with an excellent opportunity to kind of see what's out there. I originally thought I was going to be this litigator. And then I found out what corporate law was. So I really, took the opportunity to try out all of these different practice groups during my summer, and I kind of landed more so in the corporate space. And then moving into mergers and acquisitions, I knew that I wanted to kind of get into that work because of my summer. I was able to work on a few transactions during my summer, and it really kind of led me to the group and the people. So I think for me, it was really just about, trying to figure out what I wanted to do and kind of landing in the area where I felt that was the best fit for me. But then also looking long term, especially as a Black associate, I was thinking about exit opportunities because I realized I didn't necessarily want to be at the firm forever. So for me, I wanted to be in a place where I was getting amazing training. I was getting all the tools that I needed to succeed while I was at the firm, but also allowed me to have the extra opportunities to go wherever I wanted to go after I left the firm.
So my situation is a bit unique, and I think, I know a lot of international students who are a part of Walton, so I think it would be worth sharing. So I chose Big Law, or I like to say Big Law chose me because I was an international student in law school. So going through law school, I knew that I had to be extremely strategic if I wanted to remain and practice law in the United States of America. It was as simple as that. I knew that Big Law offered me the platform and the resources to be able to stay in terms of sponsorship or just in terms of being able to give me an opportunity, right, to get into the door. I knew that I probably wouldn't have to be fighting off a million other applicants because a lot of big law firms, especially for their second year 2L summer associate programs, they do offer a lot of spaces. And so I went in trying to be extremely strategic, and I joke about this all the time with my mentees, but I kept a journal where I would all the time write down why I was doing this. Like, why was I staying up until 1 a.m. in the library? And it was very simple. Why are you staying up? Because you need A's. Why do you need A's? Because Big Law requires A's. And why do you need Big Law? Because Big Law will allow me to remain here and practice here. And so that is literally the main reason I went into Big Law. I mean, when it came down to selecting a law firm, I was clueless. I did not have any generational knowledge in my family with respect to law. I did not know anything about tiers of laws and rankings and all of that. I just knew I wanted to practice. I knew that I wanted to practice litigation, and I knew that I needed a particular type of firm to give me that opportunity. And Big Law was the easiest solution I could find.
Great. Thank you all so much for sharing all of this. I'm sure it resonates with a lot of the participants in the call right now. Let's move on to the second question, which I'm sure a lot of students will appreciate. But what are the pros and cons of Big Law? And this is up for anyone. Any of you can answer.
Yeah, so there's lots of both. Let's talk about, so everyone obviously knows money off the top. There's no quicker way to get those student loans taken care of than going to Big Law. I think by the time that I started in Big Law 3 years ago, I had like nearly 400K in student loans. So that's very real, and they're all gone now because of Big Law. So that's definitely a big priority, a big reason why people stay and have careers in Big Law. The other big things that they kind of come into play as you get more experience is just the prestige, right? When I tell people that I work for DLA Piper, there's a certain level of swagger that I can bring into a room that other people can't, because I'm like, I work for the biggest and the baddest. And so I love that personally. We get to do panels like this, which is awesome. There's just a lot of unique opportunities, whether it's sitting on boards, nonprofits, really getting to participate and be an active member of the community here in LA that we get access to because of the firm that I work for. So that's a big role and a big pro for me. When it comes to cons, I'll try not to be too harsh here. I am really good at staying up all night on coffee, and I have an espresso machine at my house that I use frequently with triple shots of espresso. I'm on a triple shot of espresso right now. I'll be on another one later tonight. This is just, you learn the tools that you need to cope. The stress is real. The pressure is real. Our clients' expectations are sky high. They expect us to be the best of the best. And when you can't meet that level sometimes, because we're all human, it can nick your confidence a little bit. So there are cons, and I'm sure the group will have other ones they can express too. And certainly the pros are worth weighing when it comes to deciding whether your future career is in big law.
I think I'll go next. So for pros for me, I think training. I think for someone who had no clue what corporate law was, with no clue what mergers and acquisitions was prior to joining the firm, I think that it just provided me with a certain level of skill set, and I think firms kind of gatekeep for a certain amount of time when you first start. A lot of it is you're learning the ropes, you're learning it from scratch. A lot of it, for me, I learned on the job. So I think that just the level of training that you're getting, the people that you're around the smartest people, and they're helping you to get to the next level. So for me, I think that just the training opportunities and the opportunities to go to, sit on panels and just be able to talk to other law students. I think it just provides me with so much more leverage in that space. And I think that I'm much more confident now than I was as a first year starting, because of the level of training and because of the challenging situations that I've been a part of so far at the firm. So I think just the amount of training that you get is insurmountable. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that, students go moving into big law need to take advantage of. If there are training opportunities or something that you might relatively be interested in, 9 times out of 10, your firm is going to be offering a training for it. So definitely take advantage of all the training opportunities, because when you're thinking about, your career and your long-term goals, getting the skills and the training very early on in your career can definitely allow for a lot of exit strategy or exit opportunities later. So I think for me, it was really just the training. And in my first few years of practice, I definitely wanted to get that training very early on. On the downside, and I won't be too crazy either. I think for the biggest thing for me is the unpredictability. So in the corporate practice, I feel like a lot of times our clients treat us like business people. They will email you, and the expectation a lot of times is a very quick, if not immediate turnaround on a lot of deliverables. So I think it really is kind of being a step ahead of your client a lot of times. So like managing a checklist, keep staying organized so that things don't just come out of the blue. And I think for associates, kind of managing their time, just making sure that you're on top of things and making sure that you're organized, will help with the unpredictability. But sometimes, on Saturday nights at 9:59, you might get a fun email from the client asking for something that needs to be done by the next morning. So I think the unpredictability is probably the toughest part, but I think by navigating the firm and staying and being here for 4 years, I've learned how to master the tips and tricks of saving my time and my space and my energy while also still meeting the demands of a very demanding job.
So I want to just kind of hit on some of Christopher's points, and I kind of just want to I guess emphasize that there's a difference in like big law and bigger law, I guess I want to say. It's depends what firm you're in, depends how big of a firm you're in and where that firm is located. If we're talking about a New York City firm, the expectations are very different, right? And that matters when you go to look to decide what firm is for you, because that weighs heavily on the pros and cons. Pros, again, like everybody hit on money. I kind of want, again, back to Christopher's point of training, again, firm specific and maybe even practice group specific, because I kind of found that, well, I came from public interest, so I had a lot of training compared to my public interest work, but I do find that, especially in, merger and acquisition worlds, everybody is super busy. Deadlines are really tight. Sometimes there's not a lot of time for partners to sit down with you and actually train you as to the substance behind what you're doing. It's kind of like learning by fire. But I do agree that it's the experience of those that you're surrounded by, being in the room with brilliant attorneys and learning from different attorneys of how they manage their cases or matters, and learning from the best, right? And of course, the cons, kind of what I alluded to before, is time. Weighing whether the money is worth your time, because time is money, right? So, and again, the bigger law firms, you're going to have less time. The expectations are going to be higher. And I think it becomes really important, like, for you to set boundaries to some extent, to the extent that you can. Again, depending on what kind of firm you're in. Really important, because if you want that family time, you want time to learn in your field, you will need to set some boundaries there.
I want to follow up and emphasize some of the things Deanna said, because I work at a New York law firm, and I believe that you are 100% correct. Deanna, I think it really does boil, the demands on your job and the demands on your time really do boil down in big part to where you're practicing. And so, for instance, for me, in my experience at Cravath, one of the things that made me come back to the firm after my summer was just the sheer level of responsibility I had just as the summer, right? Some people probably don't want that, but comparing my Cravath summer to another summer, I looked at it and said, okay, I see exactly where my work product goes after I finish it, right? I hand it over to a senior. It either ends up in front of a client, ends up in front of a partner, it's being presented somewhere else. And so I knew where my work was ending up, but I also had a whole lot more responsibility on my plate, even as just the summer and now in the mid-level, and that remained true throughout my entire experience. And so I do think for those who are looking perhaps for a lot of experience early on, whether it's because you know that you probably can't withstand more than 2 or 3 years in big law, then I think that perhaps could be a pro for you. For me, one of the other pros was, I think Deanna also mentioned this earlier, the platform and resources that come with big law. I went to law school thinking I was going to come out the other side a child rights advocate. I thought I was going to be the biggest juvenile justice attorney this world has ever seen. And that is not my practice today. And it took me a very long time to reconcile what I wanted to be and what I was clearly about to become. And it became clear to me probably just before graduation that big law gave me the opportunity. They gave me the resources and the platform to do all the juvenile justice work I wanted to do. Now that meant I have to decide when I sleep, right? Because I still do have to take care of my clients' work, but because so many big law firms have dedicated pro bono programs, it means that you don't have to make the choice between doing something that you care about on the one hand and going to big law because of, whether it's the prestige or the money. So I think at the end of the day, for me, perhaps probably that won out on the first one, right? Like that definitely probably beat out that I would probably be able to spend a lot of time doing pro bono work. And I was able to share that with my law firms. Like coming in, I was told it was a risk, but I shared with them from my interview that I'm very passionate about juvenile justice and I want this to be a part of my career wherever I go. And I was able to have a conversation very early on about whether they had pro bono programs and about whether we even had any type of juvenile justice work. In terms of the cons, I'm not going to repeat the work-life balance stuff because that is perhaps the one thing we can all agree on with big law. I think for me, it's the team silos. I'm a very personable person. I like walking around and talking. I skip down the hallway and half the time I'm doing that, nobody's smiling back at me. And you have to be willing and be comfortable in that kind of space. A lot of people work in silos. A lot of the times you're not necessarily going to have a big friend group the way you're probably used to in law school. And you have to understand that yes, the workplace is the workplace and you have your friends outside, but then also take advantage of the opportunities where you do get to interact with your team.
So I won't add too much because I know we've got a lot of questions and I don't want to rehash anything, but I actually think that point is very firm specific and very practice group specific. And I know we'll talk about this down the line, but I, as a transactional lawyer and in the DC office of Latham, which is actually extremely social, I feel like I don't feel in a silo. I feel like it is very like collaborative and we get drinks and we celebrate the closings but I think it is so firm and practice group specific that it's helpful to know what type of culture you're looking for before you start your journey of looking into firms so that you can be asking the right questions and really being thoughtful about like, do I want to be in an environment where people, are nice and cordial and get their work done, but like, I don't need to have friends here. I've got friends outside of the office. Or you want to be in the type of environment where you are like grabbing lunch and dinners and coffees and stuff with people. So I think it's just, you got to find the right cultural fit, and each firm is different. And I think that's one of the hardest parts to find out about the firm, because you can't see that from the website, right? Like the only way you're going to figure that out is by talking to people at those firms, hearing about their experiences in their firm, in their specific office, in that city, in their specific practice group, because it really varies.
Well, a lot of things that I didn't really expect to hear or didn't know were things. So I appreciate the insights. The next question that we have, it's a question that might seem pretty obvious to a lot of you on the call, but I know that when I started law school, I had no idea that there was an answer to this question. So what's the difference between litigation and transactional law practices?
I'm happy to kick this one off. I did not know transactional law existed when I went into law school. And really when we say transactional law, we really mean contracts almost. So it's two parties who want to reach some sort of deal. In the mergers and acquisitions space, it is a company that wants to buy another company. So you've got a buyer and a seller, they need to reach a contractual agreement. In my world, which is finance, you've got a company that needs to borrow a loan. So you've got a bank and a borrower, and you've got to figure out a loan agreement between the two. So you're trying to reach a consensus. And I think that is like the ultimate differentiator is this is not a win-lose situation. It is we need to get to an agreement. And so it's extremely collaborative. You still might have tense negotiations, but the two parties are trying to reach the same result, which is we want to make this loan happen. We want to make this acquisition happen. You know, we want to make this real estate sale happen. We want to make this IPO happen, whatever it is. So I think it's extremely collaborative. It really is, I think of it as like a project management exercise. It's like half law, half project management, because again, using M&A as an example, if you're trying to buy a company, yes, you'll need to enter into a merger agreement where you outline how that actual acquisition happens, but there's a lot of other things that you need to do too. There's diligence that needs to be done on the company. You need to potentially arrange financing so that you can pay for buying the company. You need to transition customer contracts over to the new company. Like there's all of these moving pieces, and your job as the associates on the deal team are to negotiate the legal documents, but also make sure all of those tasks and deliverables get done. So on any given deal, I have anywhere from 15 to 150 different work streams that we are all tracking and trying to run in parallel and make sure that they, get done in time to reach this closing on this specific date. So I do really think of it as half legal, like you're doing the negotiation piece, and half project management, which I really enjoy. I won't speak to litigation because I'm definitely not a litigator, but the one plug I will say for transactional as well is that at least not in my practice, we don't do any research or writing. So you can throw away that Westlaw password. We're not going to be using it here.
Sure, I'll take a shot for the litigators in the world. So litigation is, I think when I was at UC Santa Cruz, someone phrased it to me. A visiting lawyer came in and did a panel for us. And he was like, if you feel comfortable standing up in a classroom and voicing your opinion about whatever topic it is, that might be a sign that litigation's for you. If that makes you really nervous and uncomfortable, you can power through it and learn. I can definitely tell you that I was the nervous one when all that happened. But if that's a natural fit for you, then litigation's probably your style. And I would caveat that with there's also lots of room for research and writing on the litigation side. Our best litigators are sometimes people who don't like to talk in a courtroom at all, but they can write a brief that's as good as a book in hours. And you're like, how did you do that? And again, it's a ever working skill. So everything that you get taught in your writing class about how important writing is as litigators, it is the number one skill, with probably oral advocacy being number two. On the positive side of being a litigator, we get the wins. We get to be in there and be like, yeah, I won today. And so if you like have that hyper competitive streak where you are like always out there trying to get the W's, like it's fun. On the negative side, we go home with L's some days, like just big fat L's. And you're like, man, And sometimes it's not your fault. We can't control the facts of a case. We don't get to decide what documents the client has and how good the witnesses are. So some part of it's out of your control. So you definitely have to be good at compartmentalizing your life separate from your career, because otherwise your confidence will just go up and down with your litigation docket. But it's fun when you corner somebody in a depo and a testimony, you know they're lying to you and they're just spouting off lie after lie after lie, and they think they're telling the truth, and you have the documents to show that. Like, there's some competitiveness, like a sport almost, that I think really drives litigators to stay in the fight. So and on the flip side of that, it's also exhausting. The up and downs don't stop, and there are the L's hurt. So I'll leave it at that.
That was great, Ryan. That was really good.
Thanks.
But it's not a competition, okay? I think that you heard, people, I've heard it said that corporate attorneys or transactional attorneys, basically we prevent litigation from happening. That's like part of our job, is to draft really good contracts that have no areas of gray that can be litigated. That's not always possible. We try our best, right? But I think what's really important for the participants here to know, too, that nobody has said yet, is that there's a really big difference in writing style, which is part of the reason why I think that I went into transactional practice, because in law school, they just teach you to write as a litigator, basically. They don't really teach you contract writing, but it's a very I'm sorry, I'm hearing somebody saying something. Okay. Yeah, so I don't, I just tired of writing the long briefs, and it had to be eloquent, and contract writing is so different than that. It's very, I don't know what the word is, but it's just very different type of writing. Yeah, I guess that's, that we don't have any, we're kind of behind the scenes. There's no grand court appearances. And like Ryan said, if that's not your style, if you don't like, the argumentative, the got you moments, and you just kind of want to be behind the scenes in your office and, writing contracts, but don't get it wrong though, because especially with M&A, it's intense too. It's behind the scenes, but it becomes very intense. It's just not adversarial. So
I have a quick point to make.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Christopher. This will be quick. So I'm not going to attack the difference between litigation and corporate, because I think so many people got that spot on. I practice investigation. I did not know what that was going to law school. And I'm going to take this from a perspective of probably a lot of the persons listening today don't know that you don't have to choose litigation or corporate. There's something else you can choose as well. So I'm the type of personality Ryan described, minus the competitive part, right? Like, I'm the person, I'll get up, I'll be the first one to start talking. I love meeting with clients. I loved working with experts. And even though I might be good at it, I realized I hate motion practice. It's probably a strong statement to make, but 3 years of getting practice in it taught me that this is not something I enjoy very much. But what I do enjoy is when we get a whistleblower complaint, or when we find out that there's been a ransomware attack, and I can be the first one to start looking into what's going on. And so investigations takes place after the corporate lawyers draft the contracts and before the litigators decide whether we're going to have to go to court. And so my job is to essentially step in and determine what went wrong. Is this something that's internal? Is this something we have to report to the government? Is this something someone else, a third party, might sue us about? And I find that I absolutely enjoy that. I feel more like a detective most days, but I love that, right? I love feeling like a detective. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of doc review, but it's not doc review the way people always talk about it. When I'm reviewing documents, it's because I'm preparing for investigative interviews. So we don't do depositions, we do investigative interviews. And the main difference is certain rules of evidence will not apply in an investigative interview, right? And also with investigative interviews, they go much, much faster, right? It's It's a one-on-one with a client or one-on-one with a client's employee, and you're going really fast because you're trying to figure out exactly what happened here before any type of litigation gets introduced. So there's also another option for people who might fit the mold that Ryan described, but who think they don't want to spend a day in court either, and they also don't want to just sit and do motion practice for the rest of their lives.
And kind of quickly touching on Shanique's last point, I think that, just to not be a surface level, just saying corporate and litigation, there's so many areas in both corporate and litigation. Like when you're talking about the corporate group in particular, like at Paul Weiss, we had 8 different groups within our corporate group comprised of IP, securities, finance, funds, what have you. So I think when it comes to, just learning about, the different practices, I do think that a lot of what law school teaches you is more litigation focused and more litigation driven. But I think when it comes to, just getting a very expansive view of the different areas of law that are, and within corporate and within litigation, I think it's very important, especially for anybody who's interested in going to a big law firm, to truly take advantage of the opportunities to try out different groups. And I think that's the biggest part about going to firms is a lot of people don't know. If you just see corporate and litigation, you have to choose between the two. You don't necessarily know what you're, necessarily walking into. But I think the really big aspect of going to law firms is to truly figure out and engage with the practice areas that they have available and then take full advantage of that.
Great. Sorry, I'm taking notes on all that you're saying, so it took me a second. On to our next question. How do law students know, or like, how can they figure out if a firm is a good fit for them? Because as Jan said, you don't really know much about a firm's culture by looking at the website. And I feel like even when you do interview with firms, you don't really know all that much either. So how do we find out more?
Well, in true Howard fashion, if you are not talking to someone at that firm before you walk into that door for that interview, then you are making a very big mistake. So I think the key is making sure that whether it's an alumni of your school is working at that firm, whether you have friends and mentors who are working at X firm, I think the key is really just engaging and talking to people beforehand, because they will give you the true, uninhibited advice about what that firm is and what, the practice entails. So I think the key is really just talking to people and really having the opportunity to network. I think this is why panels like this exist. This is why we're talking to you guys right now. This is the key to really learning what big law is and learning what the firms have to offer prior to going into them. Because trust me, the people who work at the firms, especially during your interview, will sell the firm to you. They are also there to sell the firm to you. So I think a big thing that I always tell people who are interviewing for law firms is while the firm is definitely trying to sell to you and you guys definitely, see the money bags and you see the opportunities, you guys also need to be interviewing that firm. When you walk into a firm, you want to be looking for things that such as culture, such as the work-life balance, such as, the opportunities available to, do certain things that you may be interested in. I think the key is really just having as much knowledge about the firm prior to you going into that interview and you talking to people and just taking full advantage of those opportunities.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think doing some self-reflection and like I mentioned before, and thinking about what it is that you are looking for is going to be crucial. Are you looking for mentoring and training? Are you looking for a social environment? Like, what are you looking for? And like Chris said, talking to people at those firms. I mean, that is the easiest way. The thing I will say is the websites don't tell you a lot, but they do tell you something. So like, still check the websites. A good example is like a lot of firms will say that they do XYZ practice area. So if you are one of the people that's like, I definitely want to do real estate law 100%, whatever it is, check the firm's website. And yes, they might say that they do real estate, but please do an attorney search by practice and office. Because if you want to be in DC and you want to do real estate, and this person has one 70-year-old man who does real estate in their DC office, they do not have a DC real estate practice. So take a little, do a little bit of investigation. before you kind of just take the website at face value. But I think that is a helpful place. And obviously, when you're going into interviews and stuff, do your research, right? Like, don't go to a firm saying that you're interested in real estate when they have one person in their DC office that does it. So just doing a little bit of digging, I think is going to be helpful. So don't completely ignore the websites, but Chris is right. Like, ultimately, the culture, what types of mentoring and training programs there are, how the diversity is, all of that stuff, you're going to best hear that from talking to people there.
Yeah. And I would add that you will know when it's not the right fit for you. So if you go there and things aren't what they appear to be, you've got to take control over your career, and you've got to do what you need to do to create an exit strategy. And probably one of the best pieces of advice that I got from a career coach some years ago was, if you're on the inside and trying to figure out how to get out, you want to start building bridges from within to get out. So if you think of yourself on an island at the firm that you're in and you're not happy there, but you need to get out and you want to do it the right way, you can build friendships with partners, with key people, key stakeholders in the organization, and they'll help you find your way out in like a really amicable, nice way that will still allow you to continue your career in big law if that's what you choose to do. So just keep that in mind as you guys all go through your careers. That's just some of the best advice that I got. So.
Any other thoughts before we move on to the next question? Okay, hearing none, I know that a couple of you have sent questions through the chat. We'll have time to address those after the pre-arranged questions. But I know that a lot of times our career services offices or offices like that at our law schools really emphasize the importance of websites like Chambers and Vault. Are they really important in real life when you're a big law attorney, or what do you all think of it?
I want to start on this one. Not because I think they matter, but because I think Christopher and Jen will be very disappointed in me. I did not research the law firms before I went into my interviews. Part of the reason was I thought it would freak me out more than anything else, right? And so I summered at both S&C and Cravat and did not have a clue what the firms represented. Had no idea where they were ranked. The only thing I knew was that they had litigation departments. And the only reason I found that out was because I knew I wanted to be a litigator, right? Or I thought I wanted to be a litigator. And so my unique experience is that I knew nothing about the firms before I walked through their doors. However, when I got there, I think I did a lot of assessment the way Ryan spoke about earlier, which is, did this feel like a place where I could be myself? So yes, probably not everybody skipping down the hallway, smiling and saying hello the way I would. But when I walked in, did I see people doing things that normal people do? Like, I didn't want to see robots in the hallway. I wanted to see people having, living, even though they were working in that environment. And I was able to see that. And so that's how I made a determination. Like, my first impression was based on my experience walking into my interviews. I'm not saying that works for everybody, right? And I'm not even suggesting that you go into interviews not armed with any information whatsoever. But what I am saying is that vault rankings really didn't matter much to me then, and they don't matter to me now.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm like a little embarrassed to say this, but I had to literally look up vault rankings because I literally didn't. I was like, what is that? I have no idea what that is. And I mean, it looks nice. It looks like, it's from the employees, but I think that part of this has to do with personality too. I mean, you can go on any of these, rankings, and it's all perspective. It's all relative to specific people. So, when I joined the firm, people had a lot to say about, certain partners or certain, practice groups. And my experience was different. So it's just really person specific, really.
Yeah, I could safely say that when I went to my OCI interviews and people had this book that said vault on it, I was like, I don't know what that is, and I'm a little overwhelmed. So I would take their book and look up the firms that I was interviewing with, but I had no clue. But the people who are in big law, like some of them bring like a different level of game to this, where they have like concrete knowledge of each firm, of each practice within each firm. And there's a level of value to having that information, because like information is key once you become an attorney. And like what the end result that I can offer at the end of the day is like, if you have a goal for whatever you want to do with your practice and with your time as an attorney, that's the most important thing. Like the rankings won't mean anything if you're not on the path that you want to be to success. And your career is not going to last long if you're not doing something that you care about, something that gives you passion to get up every day. And so like vault rankings, yeah, put that aside. Like if you want to do big law for 5 years, make your money as an associate and deuce, like do it. And then, but if you want to go on and do other things and your goal is to work for the #1 law firm in the world, according to the vault rankings or the US News rankings, do that too. But like kind of put those aside and feast on what you really want.
I agree. I don't think they matter really. I also think they're deceiving because it's, again, very practice area specific. Like you could have a firm that's, in the top 10 vault rankings, but they have a trash bankruptcy practice. And if you want to do bankruptcy, why would you go there? So it's very specific. The one thing I will say that I think is, whether or not it's fair, it's the truth, is that there is a prestige factor that I don't think it's like firm by firm, but I think it's kind of like law schools, right? Like there's a chunk of firms that maybe it's 10, 20, 30 firms that are going to be viewed widely as more prestigious than this chunk of firms over here. And whether or not that matters probably depends on your goals. If you know that you want to go in-house for sure, and that you're literally just in big law to pay off the loans, go to the most prestigious firm you can go to, because you're going to get more doors open for you at various in-house opportunities. But even that, it's like, it's specific, because again, if you are at the best environmental practice, that might not be in the vault 50, but that allows you to be a good environmental lawyer and have incredible environmental in-house options. So it's so specific. I think put a little bit of weight on the prestige factor, but ultimately it's very fact specific on what your goals are. And I think just like law schools, you're going to find your path regardless of where you fall in the vault rankings.
And just to kind of capstone the point, Jen made an amazing point. It really, at the end practice on your day-to-day lived experience, I think vault rankings don't matter at all. You probably won't even think about what your vault ranking is on a year-to-year basis. You don't know when it changes, you don't know whatever. But I think in law school, I cared a lot about it just because generally a lot of people were using it like more of as a competition thing, where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to this firm, or I'm interviewing with this firm. So I think people did place some level of like competitive aspect on it, but in actual day-to-day practice, I definitely think it does not matter. And I think that, to Jen's point, it is very practice area specific. You definitely want to make sure that you're still looking at firms that are going to give you the best opportunities and best skills and training. So I think when it comes to vault rankings, sure, you can say, this firm is #1 firm in the country, but is that firm going to still be able to pour into you? And no, I don't know if anybody knows the current vault rankings, but Cravath is #1. But who's to say, Cravath has the best experience for you in your certain areas? So I think that it really definitely comes down to who you are as a person, what you're interested in doing, and how you're best able to navigate. I think the most I used Vault for was preparing for interviews. When I saw that I was on the slot for a firm, I had to figure out what that firm was. That's what I used Vault for. I wasn't necessarily using it in any other way.
That's a really good point, especially because they have like interview questions and associate reviews and all of that. So to the students who are interning at big law firms this summer, what advice do you have for them? How can they make the best out of their summer experience?
So one thing I'll say is, some firms are different. Like Shanique kind of pointed to, her law firm in particular, she was able to do very substantive work early on. There are some firms where, you might not be able to do as much substantive work. And I think taking the opportunity to take a first crack at things as a summer is something that, one, the associates are not expecting, and then two, something that will definitely make you stand apart as a summer associate. So being able to, kind of get your feet wet with a lot of like very early on things. I know when I had a summer associate on one of my deals, they were asking, can they update the checklist? Can they, review a document? It's something that helps to move the deal forward. And it was very helpful to me. So I think that as a summer associate, just try to take as much opportunity you can to actually get substantive work, because you really want to, know what you're getting yourself into. Now, summers are definitely a great time to learn about the firm and learn about the social aspects and go to all the summer events and all of that. And I think that's a very big part of your summer. But I think that you also kind of want to know what you're going to get when you return. A lot of times when you're a 2L summer, you're just expecting that offer at the end to return back to the law firm. But if you weren't getting any substantive experience during your summer, you're going to come back to a very rude awakening. So I think that trying to get as much of that during your summer is going to be the key. Definitely still have fun, definitely still take full advantage of all the opportunities you have during the summer, whether that's lunches with partners, whether that's dinners, whether that's, going to different events. Take full advantage of that, but also recognize that you're there with the opportunity to return as a full-time associate, and you want to know what that experience is going to be like. So I think taking full advantage of that when you're in summer is key.
Yeah, I agree. And my advice for making sure you are putting yourself in the best position to be asked to return post-graduation is you need to nail the things that you don't need a law degree for. So please don't miss any deadlines. Please don't have any typos. Like, take 2 seconds to Google something before you ask the question. Like, just be organized, be responsive, like acknowledge when someone has sent you an email. The stuff that you do not need a law degree for needs to be flawless. I think you get a lot of grace on the legal stuff because they know that, especially in transactional, law school does not teach you how to be a transactional lawyer. But the thing that will, like the stuff that is in your control, in your power, that you don't need that law degree for, be fantastic and perfect with that stuff.
Following up on what you said, Jen, I think one of the things that I appreciate, I've had 2 summer associate classes now that I was an associate for. And one of the things I 100% appreciated was when people actually use the resources in addition to me. So big law, and again, this is going to be law firm specific, but I know that a lot of big law firms do have a ton of resources, whether it's a library, whether it's a document processing department that's responsible for making sure your documents look right in terms of formatting, in terms of proofreading your documents. And so you have secretaries at Cravath. Secretaries are trained on Cravath style. So if I needed someone to really quickly look at something, proofread it, make sure it's done in the way the firm expects anything that's leaving the firm's doors to look like, I can hand it to a secretary. I think so many times summers come in thinking that the only people who can give them information in the system is the associates they're working with, but you have so many resources. And I think if you do have those resources at your fingertips, tap into them, use the people around you, because they're the ones who are going to ensure that the things that you don't need a law degree for are spot on. The only other thing I would say is speaking up about your interests. So Chris talked earlier about, being proactive about trying to get work. I also think it's important to speak up about the things you're interested in. So for me, the reason I was able, Chris, to do all the substantive work I did, in part was because I was very vocal. I was like, okay, I came in, listen, I think I like experts. Can someone let me see what expert work looks like around here? Or I think I like mediation. And because I was so vocal about the things I was interested in, when those opportunities came up, I was being sent to California. I was being sent upstate New York to interview people for a class action, right? So the idea is be vocal, not just about, I want this particular type of work to do, but also make sure that you're being proactive about offering your services. Well, not your services, but volunteering yourself to take on certain types of projects.
Yeah, and I would add on that 1 second, everything that everybody said so far. And then on that piece of kind of volunteering for things, I'm a big fan of energy. Like when the summers come in at my firm, I'm like, yes, we need this. Like we need this like jolt of energy. Like for 9 months of the year, we just been sitting there, same people, same faces, same coffee. Like the summers like bring in the heat. They like make us work. Like we're like vampires. We just feast on the summers. Like it's just so nice to get like that new influx of people who are excited to be lawyers. Like you guys remind us of what it was like and how excited we were when we were interns, and like bringing that like smile, the game time energy, like your game face every day to work. The summertime really is like a special time here at DLA because we have that new energy. And so I'm just a big proponent of, again, everything that everybody said so far, but like when you bring in like that confidence, the expectations, the wow factor in your eyes about that's a cool case. Like I haven't said that in like a year or two, but like you guys say that with everything. And so bring that energy as you can to whatever practice it is that you're going into for your summer internships at any level. Just bring that energy.
I mean, I don't really have much to add here. I didn't summer at my firm because I was a lateral hire, and I came from public interest first. But I guess if I was a summer, I would want to meet and work with as many people as I could, because it's really important. Your like day-to-day happiness at your firm is a lot. It's some to do with, you know, what you do, and then it's another large part of who you work for, especially as a junior associate. Who's giving you work, what kind of work they give you, how their interactions with you are. And if honestly, like if you don't like that department, if you don't like the energy in that particular department, you might, when they, if they offer you a job, you know, you might kind of want to tell them, you know, I really like this department. I really like working with these people. I don't know how much weight that holds when they actually hire people. I know they hire in terms of need. But that's just what I would do if I was a summer.
Any other thoughts before we move on? Okay, so in the world of COVID, a lot of the summer internships or even regular semester internships are virtual, and students find it a little bit difficult to network when you are a virtual intern. Do you have any thoughts or any advice on how to be a good networker, even though you're not seeing people every day, like face to face?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is kind of like all the research that we talked about and doing your background to see what the people are like and the partners that you want to work for at the firm that you're going to intern with. The best, most efficient way that I've found to network in this remote environment is to target people one-on-one. So whether it's for a coffee meetup or and that's over Zoom or Teams or just a phone call, like the one-on-one interaction, the one-on-one request is a great way to just reach out to somebody that you don't know and take 30 minutes of their time. And then afterwards you have a relationship. And then they can think about you when they have an assignment that comes up. They can think about you when it comes up time for the decision to make you an offer to come back as a full-time employee, and just really develop those relationships. Like for every firm that you're at, by the time that your summer's over, you should have had virtual coffee with the office managing partner, the leader of the practice group that you're interested in, and all the power players that are in your office. Like there's no reason why whatever opportunities are afforded you on the group setting, you want to make the extra effort to go ahead and form those relationships now, because if you do go there as an attorney and you get that job offer, those relationships are what's going to help you succeed and make partner if that's what you want to do, and just enjoy your time at the firm.
And that, you know, I honestly was one of the people that hated the pandemic for everything being virtual. I'm a very social person. I love to interact with people. So it was really not a great experience for me. I'm glad things are going back to in-persons. But one thing, and I know that, you know, sometimes you're on, like, for example, we're on this like forum right now and there's a lot of people. And sometimes they put you into these like virtual, you know, like these little wait rooms, and there's still like 30 people in a room and it's supposed to be a networking event, and you can kind of get lost in that environment. But I think that even when you're kind of, you know, obviously we have to mold, one thing we learned in COVID is to like adapt to the environment, right? But one of the things that I think that would be helpful is after you have some of these like bigger virtual events, like to Ryan's point, shoot somebody an email. If somebody you connected with one person, or you were really interested in what that person had to say, or you wanted to learn more from that person, shoot them a follow-up email and say, you know, thank them and offer up an opportunity to meet one-on-one. Because even though we're still, you know, half virtual now in a lot of ways, a lot of people are coming out of that, and a lot of people are willing to meet you for actually an in-person coffee or an in-person lunch to kind of discuss your career goals and anything, you know, any help that they can provide to you. So I would encourage you to kind of follow up and offer like, hey, are you comfortable with meeting for lunch one day? Or, you know, can we speak one-on-one, like Ryan said?
One of the things I think we don't talk about a lot as attorney is picking up the phone and calling somebody. I think, Deanna, like you were just saying, just go ahead and email. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with sending a follow-up email. But there are also some attorneys who are A-okay with you just picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, I was reading through the company's, website. I see that you also went to Emory, or I see that we have this one thing in common, or you do this one thing that's really cool. And I just wanted to call and say hi. The person might not pick up, but one thing I do know is most attorneys, if their work line rings, they either answer or return the call, right? And so one way or the other, you might get to jump over the ton of emails sitting in someone's inbox just to get a 1 minute to say hi to that person. And then you can, at that point, make some type of plans for follow-up, whether it's someone's going to say, how about we go out to coffee later, or let's go out to lunch tomorrow. But I do think that's another way to break the ice. Don't feel like you always have to email because we're all so busy. Sometimes you can pick up the phone and call. I know that some firms also have like an internal messaging system that a lot of attorneys might like to use. Feel comfortable using that internal messaging system and saying, hey, I see X, Y, and Z, I'd love to meet you. The only other thing I would say is if you are shy, because not everybody's super outgoing and social, right? If you are shy about initiating or asking for a one-on-one, do it in summer groups, like do it in pairs. Like I had my summer associate who actually ended up in the same office as I am. When we were together as summers, we knew that neither of us wanted to do a one-on-one thing because we were afraid it was going to be awkward. So everything we did it together. So if it was she was calling someone, she'd be calling and say, hey, do you want to do lunch? My office mate and I would love to go out with you. You know what I mean? And so it's okay to reach out one-on-one. It definitely is beneficial, but one-on-one doesn't always have to mean literally you plus an attorney. It could be you plus another summer associate who really is interested in getting to know that person as well.
And one quick thing I'll add is you'll be surprised how many partners and associates love talking about themselves in their practice. They really do. So like the way that I got on my first M&A deal, because I joined the general like corporate group, I actually just shot an email to a partner that was the head of the M&A practice. I literally said, hey, I'm interested in learning more about M&A. I really have no background or experience with it, but I see that you've been doing X, Y, and Z deal. Do you have time to just chat about it? And literally he just picked up the phone. Hey, let's grab lunch tomorrow. So you would be surprised how willing people are, because especially during the pandemic, people are just so used to being siloed, especially us associates. We're so used to kind of just waking up, going to your computer at home and just kind of working and going back to sleep or whatever. I think just having an email or just having somebody who is interested in talking to you and learning more about what you do, we get so excited to see those things. So I think really, even if you're the most nervous person, I think you can kind of take the fear off in knowing that people want to see that from, summer associates. They want to see that you're eager. They want to see that you're engaged. They want to see that you're interested and you want to learn more. So I think you shouldn't necessarily be afraid. Nobody's just going to like completely dismiss you. Now, some people might be busy and it might take them a little bit longer to respond to your email or, phone call, but definitely make the shot in the dark if you can. If it's somebody who you're working on a project with or a team that you're already on, it's very easy for you to get in contact with those people and very easy for you to, network and make those connections as well. But if it's someone that you don't even know, like the managing partner or what have you, you can still do those things and people are so receptive to it. So like just know that people want to see these things. They're not going to be like, why is this weird person emailing me? So definitely take full advantage of it, because we love talking to summer associates about our experiences.
Any other thoughts? Anyone else? No? Okay, so I have one more question before we move on to the chat questions. So what would you say makes a successful summer/junior associate? Is there any like soft skills that law students should be developing while in law school, or any tips like that at all?
I want to say that a huge part of, at least if you're going into transactional and that's what you want to do, I think that Jen pointed it out in a previous question, is project management and organization. It's huge, because I work with a lot of wonderful, great attorneys, but they're bad project managers. And they don't delegate well. They don't keep you in the loop of things. If you can learn how to really be a great project manager over what you're in charge of. That is so helpful and helpful to the partners that you're going to work with. That's a great skill to have. And then just really training yourself to pay attention to small details. That's also big, especially at big law. Because I think Ryan, I'm not sure who said it earlier, clients expect you to be perfect. Partners expect you to be even more perfect. And so, it's our responsibility to kind of fine tooth everything and go through everything 3-4 times to make sure it's as perfect as it can be before we send it out to the partner or to the senior associate, so that they don't have to do that extra. Because the worst thing is for somebody to get your work and to be redlined, and they look at you, like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. If your work product is not great, to just really try your best and do as best as you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I said this before, the things that don't require a law degree need to be perfect. Please don't have any typos. Please don't miss a deadline. But I also think just keeping in mind that your job really is to make your supervisor's life as easy as possible. So if you have a question on a document, you're saying, hey, I was looking at this provision, I can't quite understand what it means. Attach the document that you want me to look at. Like, don't make me go through my emails to find the document that you want me to answer your question about. If we're all, the team is trying to set up an internal meeting, raise your hand and say, I'm happy to send the calendar invite. Like, whatever you can do that to just make your boss, your boss's life easier is always going to be appreciated. And if you're not, if you're sure that that's helpful, do it. If you're not sure, just ask. Say, would it be helpful if I brought printed copies to the meeting? Happy to do that. And just anything you can do. And I think substantively, this was sort of touched on, but have a good attitude. Like, some of the stuff you're going to have to do might not be fun. You might get assigned, some, I don't know, research project that you think is boring, but you just kind of need to pretend like it is the most interesting thing in the world and have a good attitude about doing it. Because shifting away from that type of work, you can do that, but you need to still impress the people that you're working with, because a lot of firms, people talk. And I think that's not something I really understood when I was a summer associate. But if you are a rock star summer, word gets around about that. Similarly, if you are not a rock star summer, word gets around about that too. So just because you're not, you do a real estate assignment, you're like, you know what, I hate real estate, I'm going to kind of mail it in because I know I don't want to do this. Don't do that, because that real estate associate might start talking to the M&A associate in the group that you do want to do work for and saying, Chris is terrible, don't put him on your stuff. So just try to be as impressive as possible, regardless of whether or not the assignment is what you want, and make the best impression that you can. That's the other advice I'd give, is first impressions really go a long way. So if people view you as responsive and enthusiastic and organized from day one, that reputation is going to carry, and people are going to, it's going to kind of snowball and create this reputation for itself. So really just try to hit the ground running. And again, focus on, that doesn't mean you need to be able to substantively draft a merger agreement day one, but it means the things that are in your control, even the little things, try to do as perfectly as you can.
Sorry, I just want to say one more thing that I forgot to say. Communication is huge as well. Communicate. If you're not going to be on time with something, or if you're pushing up against a deadline and you have 4 other partners also that you owe work to, communicate with them. Say to them, I have this for this partner and it's due the same time as you're asking me to get this done. That's what your business unit leader is for as well, is communicating when you're too stressed and you have too much on your plate, because it's better that you communicate and say, hey, because sometimes the partners, there's some flex room there, and they will say to you, hey, it's okay, get it to me on Monday or get it to me in a couple of days. This is more important. But when you're new, you don't really know the priorities yet. So leave it up to the partners to be able to determine what the priority is in terms of your workload, and just communicate with them what you have going on.
agree. I would second everything everybody said. I think the key word, the advice that I just got on what I would need to do to make partner was to make myself indispensable to the partners that exist now. And so your goal as a summer to like crush it is to make yourself indispensable to the associates and partners that you work with, which is doing exactly what Jen and Deanna just described to a T. The other thing I would recommend for people who are looking on like, how do I do that? There's a book called The Curmudgeons Guide to Law. It's like a little paperback book. It's maybe like a half-inch thick. And I kept that by my side during my summer and then my first 2 years of practice, because it just gave me reminders, especially for the litigators, on how to write things in like a short, concise way, what the most important thing is to the partner. Like, granted, it's a general book, so it's not necessarily applicable to each individual, but the Curmudgeon's Guide to Law can just be a little book that you keep by your side, by your computer, to help you kind of make sure that you're staying on point with every assignment you turn in. So I highly recommend you check that out.
I just dropped a link to the Amazon page for that book as you were saying, I was typing it out.
Yeah.
So we received quite a few questions in the chat. First and foremost, this should be like a quicker one. Do any of you have any experience in energy law or anything like that, or any advice for students who are interested in that practice area?
I don't. The one thing I will, energy law is very broad. There's like regulation energy law, where you're kind of dealing with like the regulations that govern uses of energy. There's also something called project finance, which might not on its face obviously relate to energy, but that deals with the financing of infrastructure projects, which could include things like power plants, windmills, that type of stuff. So that's about as far as I can speak on it, but just wanted to throw the project finance thing out there specifically, because that doesn't have the word energy in it, but deals with, like, it's a transactional practice that deals with the construction of energy projects.
Okay, next question then. We have a student who has a big law offer for their 2L summer. They want to know, what do you think, why do you think it is difficult for a person of color to stay in big law or advance long-term?
We have an hour for this question, right? We get a long time.
Right.
I'll hit you with some quick snippets of what we do. So I sit on I'm the co-vice chair of the African American Resource Group here at DLA. Man, the problems are systemic and they are rampant, and it's going to take a lot of work from not just this generation, but from the generations to come to create an equal playing field. The reasons are everything that you would suspect they were if you were on the outside in, not knowing anything. And then there's even more reasons, because there are efforts being made by people that you don't even know about to try to fix these things. And there's only so much power and time that the big law partners who do care about these projects have. And so the people who are in power and care are trying to manage their own careers and further themselves while also looking after the greater good for us. And it is a beast to tackle. And so I don't have the direct answer to it. I actually sent Jen a note, because I think the Black Big Law Pipeline project is like a huge win for us and like a great concept and idea, and it's been executed to a T so far. And there's just so much more work just like that Big Law needs to do in order to kind of get itself together. And until then, we're going to keep seeing the high attrition rates, the low promotion rates, and it's just a rampant problem that if anyone knows the answer, I would love it if you could tell us, so that DLA can get it together, and big law in general too. It's just a rampant problem.
I mean, do you think, Ryan, that part of the issue is that, we're not bringing in as much people of color in the onset, because you're going to lose a bunch of people, I feel like, along the way, right? And if you start off like 2 Black people or 1 Black person in your class, by the time moves up class years, at the partner level, you're not going to have any, even if you start with 3 versus, you have a broader class of white people. You move up, some are going to fall out. And then by the time partner level, you're left with some white people, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking, you know, here
Each,
with
each level means more. I think the most true thing that the most false thing that I've heard is that there aren't enough talented law students and lawyers. That's the most garbage BS response that I can hear. What I do know is that we need to create and foster an environment in big law that allows us to succeed, see others above us succeeding, because that's what I think that's one of the biggest missing pieces that we don't necessarily have in big law, is the ability to have the sponsors and the mentors who are in the room when the decisions are being made. And it's not even that we need them for any specific tasks. It's just having people there that you can look up to as you go through your career and as you are making all the moves and inroads that you need to see it's being done before. And there's just a level of concept of I can do this too when you see it every day. And the absence of that in some major practice groups across the country, I mean, globally, right? There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it is a systemic problem that is not going away anytime soon, unfortunately. I think in the meantime, some tips on how to like stay in it long term that you can sort of try to enact yourself are like Ryan said, you need to find a sponsor. I think the first step to finding a sponsor is to be an excellent, indispensable attorney, because people are going to want to pour into you if you are good. Everyone wants to be associated with somebody who is good. So step one is like learn as much as possible, attend the trainings, become an excellent attorney, nail the non-law student stuff, like the non-law school stuff, and just try to use those first couple of years to really like hone your craft. And sometimes because of the aforementioned systemic issues, that involves being proactive, right? Like if you have closed a deal or made a filing or whatever litigators do, like specifically say, hey, would love to get some time on your calendar to debrief, talk about how that went, talk about how I can do better. Like proactively seek out that type of feedback and support so that you can implement that the next time. A lot of firms have annual, maybe semi-annual reviews, but if you're going, 3, 6, 9, 12 months after you've submitted something to be getting feedback on that thing, it's not enough. So you've got to really like put your hand up, get that feedback in real time. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was going to say to Alicia's point in the comments, I think a piece of that is also making sure that associates of color are getting that high quality work and that high quality work experience with like our top-notch clients, right?
Yep. Raise your hand. Say, and again, like it shouldn't be on us, but right now it just is. So like say, you know what, I would love the opportunity to work on a cross-border deal. If you have any coming up, please keep me in mind. I would love the opportunity to take a crack at the merger agreement. Please keep me in mind. Like you have to be vocal because you might not be getting those opportunities if you're not vocal. The other piece of it that I think I do think we have a systemic problem. I also think that there are a lot of successful people of color in big law and they choose to leave. And I think those people choose to leave. If you're choosing to leave because you get this incredible in-house opportunity, bet. Like, I'm very happy for you. I think a lot of people choose to leave because they're burnt out. And so preventing yourself from getting burnt out is, I think, another really important piece of the puzzle. And that is much easier said than done. But I think some of the best advice that my sponsor gave me was, because I had been doing a lot of extracurricular activities, let's say, like I was, on recruiting committee, I was saying yes to every single coffee from any law student that reached out to me. I was saying yes to every single interview request when the recruiting department was like, please interview this person. Even if it was a white male IP litigator, I was like, sure. And my sponsor said, when I was about a 6th year associate, she pulled me aside and she said, I know that you do a lot of this stuff because you're trying to increase diversity in the field, and the best thing you can do to increase diversity in the field is make partner yourself. And you are not going to do that if you burn yourself out because you're having 15 coffees a week. So she said, you need to start being strategic about the things that you say yes to. Do you need to be like, does it need to be Jen Kent that does that specific thing? Do you need to be the person that interviews the white male IP litigator? Girl, no. There are 2,500 other people at Latham & Watkins that can do that. If it is a Black woman who wants to do transactional work, that is something I should be doing. So I think when I kind of shifted that mentality, I stopped saying yes to everything and I started being really intentional about how I was spending my time, because like everyone has said, on this call multiple times, time is your most precious resource, and Big Law puts a lot of client demand on that. So the very limited time that you have outside of those client demands, you need to be really strategic with, so that you're not burning yourself out as a fourth year when you could have made it.
I want to be mindful and respectful of the time. I know we received a lot more questions in the chat, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but I'm hoping that the students who ask questions won't be afraid to reach out to our panelists and get the answers that you want. I just wanted to ask all five of you if you had any final words, any additional piece of advice, or anything that we haven't touched upon that you think the attendees would benefit from listening.
Yeah, my 1 minute spiel is the imposter syndrome is real, and you're gonna feel that at moments. You're gonna feel like you don't belong, and you're gonna feel like you can't do it. Trust me, I'm at a top firm. You can do it. These people that I work with are brilliant in their own right, but there's nothing they're doing that you can't. I promise you. And to the extent that you need help along the way, kind of as Jen mentioned, like, don't be afraid to reach out to resources around you, including like mental health help and counseling and therapists. Like, the battle in Big Law is long and tough. And don't be afraid to use your resources in whatever form that comes in: family, friends, professional help. Like, it's a long journey. And so just, spartan yourself up, and you can know that you can do it.
I guess one thing, you got it.
Okay.
I guess one thing I'll say is that Big Law is truly a marathon. It's one of those things where developing the skills very early on, building a resource of people that can help you, and understanding that those people might not always look like you, is something that's very big. I think developing and having sponsors is something that you want to, do, and that it's not as easy as just saying, "Oh, I want a sponsor," and just asking somebody to be your sponsor. It's more so by setting yourself apart, delivering great work product. People will want to sponsor you. People will want to, be a part of your success at the firm. So I think developing those tools and having a plan going into a firm, I think those are the biggest keys that I would tell any, Black law student of color going into a law firm, is really just have a plan. Know what you want to get out of the career. Trust me, if you don't want to make partner, if you don't want to be that person at the top of the law firm, understand what that means and understand how to get the tools and resources that you need while you are at the firm, so that if you ever want to make that jump and ever decide to leave, you have those skills necessary. Because trust me, in-house, they're not trained to teach you how to be a lawyer. So like, they're not going to, it's not going to be the same as the law firm where it's kind of more hand-holdy. It's more, we're teaching you how to be a lawyer. I think a lot of times the expectation is that you know what you're doing already. So just making sure that if you ever want to, pivot or do anything other than stay at a law firm, making sure that you're getting those resources and tools while you're at the firm.
Those are good points, Chris. And there's just so many things to say in closing, I guess. I think one of the most important things is, in this journey, just never forget who you are. Never lose yourself in whatever way you turn. If it's Big Law, if it's anything else, don't forget what's important to you in life. Don't forget your family. Don't forget your friends or hobbies that interest you, because those things, matter to your mental health as well, right? And matter to who you are as a person. It's what you bring to the table when you come to this firm. It is the diversity, right? That they're looking for. It's who you are. Don't lose those things in the battle for your time, right? So make those boundaries where you can, to not lose yourself. And I think the other, some people already hit on the points, is take advantage of the opportunities while you're here, while you can. Every opportunity that you have, take advantage of it. Every resource that you have, take advantage of it. Even if you decide not to stay in Big Law, nothing really in life, besides, what do they say? Like, I don't remember this expression, but not too many things in life are permanent. You can always change your mind. If you don't be scared of Big Law, if it's not for you, I get 1 million recruiters a day calling my phone. So you can always transition to something different if you don't like what you're doing. And I think too, is what's really important is like who you know. Put yourself out there. We just were at a conference the other day where they said that like part of D&I is that people miss is belonging, that the firm has to create this belonging for people. And I just feel like if they're not going to create it for us, we can create it for ourselves. We put ourselves out there. We find those sponsors, because a lot of success in life, unfortunately, some of it is your hard work, but a lot of it is who you know, right? Having people to speak about you in those spaces, to speak highly of you and to advocate for you. That's really important in anything, and especially in this field, in this career. So good luck with everything, guys. And I'm glad that I was able to take part of this panel.
Thank you so much, all of you, for speaking to us. I hope I'm not being too forward when I say this, but students, please reach out to these amazing panelists, connect with them on LinkedIn or whatnot, if you want to hear more about their careers. Unfortunately, or fortunately, our next panel is starting in like 30 seconds. So I've been told to cut this out, but it was a pleasure speaking to all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.